Guys who got told no during a failed marriage proposal. What happened afterwards? r/AskReddit. My mom's boyfriend proposed to her 3 months into dating. She was 40, had one disastrous marriage and subsequent divorce under her belt by that time, and felt like it was too soon in the relationship to be talking about marriage. He accepted her no, but said he wouldn't ask again, and he hasn't. They've been together 25 years now and never married. We'd been joking around about it for months. I'd ask sarcastically in the most unromantic way. She'd say no, we'd laugh and move on with our day. I'd apparently conditioned her so well that when I asked for real, she flippantly turned me down, and everyone around me either gasped or got this real awkward look on their face. She changed her tune quickly when she actually looked and saw me holding the ring. We've been married 17 years now. Good times. Not my own experience, but I was in the restaurant when a failed proposal happened. Somehow the guy was able to get the families involved in this fancy dinner without the girl's knowledge as to what was going to happen. He orders their drinks, where he had the ring cleaned and then placed at the bottom of her pina colada drink. She gets up and goes to the bathroom, and that's when some of her family moved in close with their cameras, phones, ready for the proposal. She comes back and the drinks are brought. She refuses the drink, much to his dismay, but doesn't get the hint. She doesn't want it. You should have your drink. It's really good. She again says no. This goes on back and forth. Finally, she says no, and is disturbed by his pushy behavior. I hear this from my table. I can't marry someone who won't respect my boundaries. She gets up and walks out of the restaurant. The guy sits there waiting for her to cool off. She doesn't come back in, so he fishes out the ring and has the drinks taken away. She comes back in near the end, and he shows her the ring and tells her it was in the drink. And she slaps him and says no. This time she is angry and leaves. Everyone packs up and heads to pay. He just sits there by himself. I wanted to get up and say something, but my date was ready to go home. I had a foreign student at my university I'd only spoken to on the phone a few times, and whom I'd never met call my father on Christmas morning of my freshman year. He asked my dad for my hand in marriage. They talked for ages, and my stupid father said yes. He was so out of touch with my life, he assumed the guy was my boyfriend. My dad thought I'd be thrilled, the idiot. I proposed to my girlfriend at a family gathering and she said no. It was a tough moment for both of us, but we sat down and had a long, honest conversation about our relationship. We realized that we had been drifting apart for a while and that the proposal brought those issues to the surface. We decided to break up and focus on our own personal growth. It was painful at the time, but looking back, it was the right decision for both of us. I was with a girl for a couple of years. I started talking about getting married. She was up for it, but kind of distant about it. I take her out ring shopping and she breaks down, tells me she can't marry me. I was really confused. I thought things were going great. Turns out I was just the guy taking care of her until her ex gets out of prison. I paid for her schooling and helped her get off drugs. We were looking at houses. I thought we were making a life together. She left me not long after that. He got out of prison a few months later. She went back to stripping. I ran into them a few times. I guess she's happy. Not a guy but a girl, I asked my boyfriend to marry me. I didn't do a whole scene about it. We were talking and I said that I wanted to get married and I felt ready for it. And he just said no. I was mad. He had never mentioned this and we've talked about it before. All he had ever said was that he didn't want it because it was expensive and didn't want a big party, and so, in my understanding, we would get married at the courthouse and have a small gathering with family and close friends. Then I found out he didn't want to get married because his parents had a divorce and he didn't want to go through that. It took a while to unravel all his issues with marriage. At a certain point I said I'm not going to wait around with a guy that doesn't want to get married. I had always been very clear about wanting to get married. He disagreed and said I've also mentioned that I didn't want a big wedding. I'm like ... We realized we were both talking about different things. He had put together marriage and the wedding and I wasn't. Still, obviously, it wasn't solved right then and there. I gave him some time to think. After like a month, I came back to the subject and he asked me why I wanted to get married, and I talked about all the laws that protect the couple in the eventuality of disease and death, in owning property, in security if we had children, etc. He suddenly just said, "Oh, I didn't know about that." Then, "Yeah, we'll get married then." We've been happily married for 5 years. Almost every day he says he's so happy being married to me, and that his wedding day was one of the happiest of his life. Not the guy here, but the naysayer. He had just finished a 1,000-mile solo cycling tour, and I met him at the finish. I was so caught up in his achievement that I did not see the proposal coming, and I was shocked. So I told him right there, I love you, but I can't give you an answer right now. Of course, there were tears, and we both called family members and then continued on our planned holiday. We had such a good time on our holidays, and were able to enjoy each other's company like normal. So I figured that if we can handle this bump in the road this well, we are a great team, and at the end of the holiday I told him I would love to marry him. That was 7 years ago, and I haven't regretted my decision for a second. I simply needed time to process a life-changing choice, and my partner was mature enough to understand this. I got everything ready, and she said no, at least not right now. And it sort of muted the rest of the weekend. Several people heard what I was going to ask and congratulated me next week. It was surreal informing them she said no. It should have been a wake-up call to just end it there, but neither of us wanted to. We were our first everything, and we had a lot of history. I guess I thought it would just work out, but her reservations on being married at that time never really went away. I admitted that both of us wanted exclusive things. Our lives were headed in opposite directions, and compromise just meant someone was going to be resentful. When we started dating, both of us really helped each other out in a lot of areas and through some really challenging times. But we learned later on that things that were great then may not be great now. Both of us were good people, but some things just have a lifespan. We got what we needed, and it was time for the next phase of our lives. Alone. A huge part of successful marriages requires compromise on small issues. But some issues have no compromise. It's okay to fight for things if there's a way that both of you can get what you want, and there's no shame in letting things go if there's nothing more that can be done. We broke up 7 or so months later. Restarting life for what was the second time for me was tough because I was also going through a lot of other things and she wasn't able to be there anymore. The same thing was happening on her end, so it just kind of ended there. We both dated other people and got married to others eventually. So in the super longer term, it was all okay. When I was 21, I got involved with one of my college teachers who was significantly older than me. Somehow it kind of worked out, and we were together almost 10 years. We had the whole house and dog thing worked out. But from about 5 years into it, we started taking separate holidays because neither of us were particularly interested in what the other wanted to do. One day I went to his sister's place to pick him up from his most recent trip to Thailand. We lived in a regional city, and his sister lived closest to the nearest international airport. So he calls me into the guest bedroom, where he's been going through all his luggage and is surrounded by dirty holiday clothes and cheap trinkets. He pulls out a small glitter bag and hands it to me, saying, "This is for you. It's an engagement ring. Will you marry me?" I was shocked and panicked and said, "Okay." Then I went out to the lounge room and called my best friend. She said it's okay to go back and say no. So I did. I went back in there and explained that I didn't want to get married. He just said okay and asked me not to tell anyone he'd asked. The next day, at the beginning of the 4-hour drive home, he admitted that he accidentally got a happy ending the previous time he was in Thailand the year before. I was furious with him for essentially lying by omission for the whole previous year, especially when we had maybe had sex once in that whole period. I broke up with him then and there, and then had the most awkward 4-hour drive to continue through. I got the last laugh, though. I ended up finding and marrying a wonderful man who happens to be a massage therapist. So now I get all the happy endings, and the irony is not lost on me. I was vacationing in Las Vegas back in 2006 with my then family. We took in a show a day on the trip. The day after Christmas, we saw a magic show. About halfway through the performance, the magician had a young woman from the audience come up and assist with some trick. He did the meet and greet with her. She was on a vacation with her boyfriend's family and blah, blah. The magician does his thing, and then suddenly the boyfriend appears out some box that deceptively empty just a second ago. The boyfriend goes down on his knee, out comes the ring, and he goes into his declarations of love and affection and rehash the last few years. It was a sweet proposal. She smiles and clasps her hands in front of her face and says, "Absolutely nothing." We in the audience are all silent and waiting to cheer and applaud, but waiting for her to say yes. It seemed like an eternity, but then the magician burst out with applause. He quickly guided the happy couple off the stage and announced she said yes. So we all cheered for the happy couple. What else was he going to do? They had great seats at a table, center stage and down in the front, where we could see the happy couple and family.